And at the end of the day, that's restorative listening, being able to truly engage with someone in order to make a connection versus make a point.
Exploring the landscape of modern missions. This is Field Notes, a podcast by Mission Discovery.
So if I hit record now, but we literally haven't come up with an intro yet
I think our intro is just arguing about the intro.
about what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But okay, well, I mean, all right. Hi everybody. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work, Haley.
So I think it's just Phil. Everyone who's listening, Phil is here with us today. And Phil, you don't know this, but Michael wants us to do like a canned intro that's like, "Hi, I'm Haley. Hi, I'm Michael. This is the Mission Discovery podcast." And we just like, that kind of thing.
Except it's not the Mission Discovery podcast.
It's the Field Notes
It's the Field
podcast by
Notes
Mission.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that just feels kind of natural, like unnatural. And so I feel like we should just like get into the podcast and then have like a pre-recorded thing that's like blah 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 blah. And then we just get right into the content. But Michael is of a different opinion.
Okay. Well, welcome to the Field Notes podcast. I'm Michael Neff. I've got Haley Hofstetter with me. And today we've got Phil Long. Phil Long is a pastor out in Tacoma, Washington. He is a good friend of mine. We initially met when we were in South Dakota, and Phil was working with a community center. But now Phil's out in Tacoma, and we've had the privilege and honor of taking some teams out and serving alongside Phil and his congregation. And today, Phil is here to just have a good old chat with us.
Hi, everybody.
So, Phil, one of the first questions that we'd like to ask you today to just kind of get things rolling is probably, as you know, from being on our mission trips and leading mission trips yourself, each evening of a mission discovery mission trip, we have what's called God sightings. And that's just a time where people kind of recognize how they've seen God throughout the mission trip. And so we would like to ask you to start off with, how have you seen God lately?
I think because I have 3 children and 2 in high school, 1 in 5th grade, my baby in 5th grade. And it's been, I think a God sighting for me has been the past couple of weeks, they have been very aware of people, and watching them now begin to take hold of their faith and see God use them in ways. Sometimes it's the smallest of ways, but just their ability to be in tune to the Spirit, but then in tune, especially with those around them. Just as they've come back and shared incidences at school. And so I just watch them. And I think as a parent, or if you, not even as a parent, as a grandparent, or if you know someone or work with children, and you spend so much time like trying to display to them, teach them, and watching them start to really make it their own, and is a cool thing to sit back. And so I think over the past couple of weeks, watching them like step into that and start to share incidences has been a really cool God sighting, and especially my 5th grader. As much as traumatic as this is for me and my wife, there she's off to 5th grade camp, so she's away from home for the next couple of days, or tomorrow she comes home. But even that, watching her become confident and courageous enough to do that, I don't think I could have done that in 5th grade. So I think that's a really cool thing to see, that she's kind of stepping into herself and to who God has called her to be. And so that's been I think my God sighting.
That's really good.
Yeah, really sweet. So, Phil, we also would just love to know a little bit about your background and how you became passionate about the things that you're passionate about today. So, kind of just like walk the listener through who you are and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah. Um, well, I originally grew up in the Midwest, and my dad was a pastor, and so we kind of had grown up in that the church environment. And as I got older, and especially into high school, like many pastors' kids, at some point there was just the underside of the church that oftentimes that we see and experience when we don't be who we are called to be as a community. And so I remember at one point saying, like, God, like I love you, Jesus, you're amazing, but I don't want nothing with your church. And so there's a time that I just kind of like I would say that I just wandered life. And I think in that time it was a good experience for me to get to not be bound by boundaries that oftentimes I think we can do in the church of saying you have to be this way, you have to do this. And so and I wouldn't say that I was that lost or the prodigal son that we so often like to, put on people. I just like, I started asking questions. I started to like push back. And so in that, I'll save you guys, this could be a 5 hour podcast if I go to all of that. But at some point, like, Jesus, one day I was walking home from work and had gone through a lot of hurts and bruises, and God was like, are you ready to come back? And are you ready just to like be with me? And so yes. And and through that, as he began to, as I began to truly listen and say, okay, Lord, what is it? He was like, hey, like, I know that it can be ugly and she can be broken at times, but like the church is mine, and I am at work redeeming my church, and I'm calling you into it in some form or fashion. And so went back to school and decided to get a theology degree. And through that, at some point, my friend was like, a friend of mine, a mentor, was like, hey, you should work at camp for a while. And so I went to camp, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just stay in camping ministry. And I got really fixated on trying to do the right thing or find the perfect niche for me. And I remember at one point God was like, hey, like, it's not for you to worry about what you're going to do, because ministry isn't necessarily this or that. It's you walking with me, and I will bring people to you. Like,
Oh.
the spirit leads, the spirit moves if you're in step with me. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. So I just continued to faithfully say, okay, Lord, and have this more willingness to not get caught up in a certain boxes that it has to be this. I have to do camping ministry, or do I do youth ministry, or do I do senior pastoring, or whatever it may be. And in that, like, had gotten married, and I was youth pastor for a while. And then my wife was like, hey, I really think you should go to seminary. So I went to seminary. But then when I was in seminary, I was at a church, interning at a church that was a church plant. And it was back in the time, right at that moment where church plants were like truly cutting edge, to where they were like, hey, we're really going to push the boundaries. We're going to show a video clip in like of a movie, and not of like, Passion of the Christ video clip. We're going to show um,
It's always
some random movie.
Braveheart. It's always Braveheart.
Yeah, because that's what we do. I did push the boundary, if I can say this on here. I did push. I showed a Zoolander clip,
Oh
and I thought
wow.
I was so cool. And I was back there with the clip was going on, and one of the leaders looks at me and was like, Zoolander? And I was like, well, yeah, this is like cutting edge, and it's gonna fit. And then there was a moment, it was a conversation with Will Ferrell's character in Zoolander, and it was very suggestive. And I didn't, when I was like trying to find a clip to go with the text and whatnot, I must have not caught it. So I sat there like starting to sweat, and I was like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have shown this. And he's sitting at me, like watching me, like, mm-hmm. Anyway, so, but their whole purpose of doing all of that was to really, like, the gospel has to be good news for all people, not just church people.
Mm.
And so I think in those moments was really that kind of like my heart began to shift, and to say, hey, like, we've got to like, he calls us to take the good news into all the world. And all of the world is people that don't think and act like us. and
Mhm.
it has to be that it's going to be sweet tasting if we give them Jesus. And so during that time, um, that God really began to just shape and move in my heart. And that's where really just felt called for the longest time of identifying the injustices of, of what we've done as the church to Native Americans here in America, and especially in South Dakota, in the Midwest where I've been. And so we church planted out in Rapid City, and um, our focus was really just to come alongside it and say, look, you guys, Jesus is not what has been given to you.
Mhm.
You've been given legalism. You've been given a lot of things that have been tied up with empire stuff. But the church, we're here to come alongside and just say, hey, the good news is that Jesus sits with you. Jesus cares about you. Jesus cares about your culture. Jesus is here to transform you, right? He's not here to make you into another white person. He's here to like redeem and to redeem relationships and to make it better and fuller because that's what he does. That's what the abundant life means. And so 5 6 years out there, and just again recognizing the necessity for us to continue to break the boundaries that we've so quickly put up around us to protect ourselves to for whatever reason. And then we came out here to Tacoma, and just working with a church through a revitalization process of saying, look, you guys, like, we're not here for our own legacy. When the church is about their own legacy, I believe it ceases to be the church.
Mhm.
We have to take care of each other, but our sole purpose is to take the good news into to all people, and be light in darkness and all of those other great metaphors. And so during this time, I went back to school, got my doctorate in a doctorate in ministry, spent a lot of time on listening, learning and the value and power of listening, and what I've coined as restorative listening. And restorative listening I've described as humbly engaging with others for the sole purpose of finding peace or shalom, wholeness, because that's what redemption is bringing to wholeness, making whole again. So did a lot of there, working on a book, using it in places here, and I've also recognized again we have to be into the world. And so now I've gone back to school again because I'm an idiot, and working on a counseling degree so that I can take some of that restorative listening and actually put it into practice in the world to bring wholeness, to bring redemption. So as a quick, as fast as I can of how I got here.
That's incredible. I think I love the way that you told your story, and I love the point that you made that ministry doesn't have to be us putting ourselves in this one
Mm,
box. And I'm so glad that you were faithful to the Lord in that, because like you did youth ministry, like you're helping the Native Americans, like, and you're like being sensitive to their culture and telling them like all these transformative things for them. But then you're also like going to school and getting a degree, you're planting a church, like all these different things are ministry. And you wouldn't have been able to wear all these hats if you were like, oh, I'm Phil and this is the box that I'm
yeah.
in. So that's really awesome. And I know that's going to be an encouragement to our listeners as well. And then now you get to the point where you're learning about restorative listening and counseling and those things. And so I think Michael has a few questions in those areas for you.
Phil, we've been on quite a few trips together out in South Dakota, over in Tacoma, and then also we've been to Northern Ireland together. A couple years ago, we went out there and worked with a youth center there. And I know, I think it was on that trip, and then when we came back, we really started talking a lot, you and I, about the sacred spaces that we are made aware that are there when we go out on a mission trip, right? So when you're on a mission trip, we encounter these sacred spaces, and I know that was a topic that you and I talked a lot about. Can you give a little bit of an overview? What are sacred spaces to you? How do we encounter them on a mission trip?
hmm I think I would describe a sacred space, or even I think it's Dr. B that even went on to say those thin spaces,
Mm.
or those moments where I love is it John Mark McMillan's How He Loves, where heaven meets earth with a sloppy wet kiss.
Mm.
And it's that thin space that if we quiet ourselves enough, and I think that's what keeps us from actually seeing the sacred spaces, is if we quiet ourselves, we start to recognize that the spirit is already moving, right? So on the mission field, so often in the church we have this mentality that think we are bringing Jesus to this place, right? It's us that's going to bring, and there are elements that we're bringing the spoken word of God, right? Because we're coming to proclaim, we're coming to serve, we're coming to um, but but that's not what we see in Scripture. We see that God is the Lord of the all of the cosmos, right? We see that the Spirit is moving. That we see that the Spirit is when we go somewhere, the Spirit's already ahead of us, right? The Spirit is the one moving in the hearts. The Spirit is the one that's working. And what we do is just simply step into those moments. And then I think we have to quiet ourselves to see that it is sacred space because God is present. God is there, God is working, and there's those thin, those spots, right? In moments, and it's not necessarily physical spots. I think it's in moments that we see that God is at work, God is present. And so it becomes sacred in the fact that God is the Lord of the universe and is there. And so like over in Ireland, there's just something about old places, right? Like here in America, like everything dates back to whatever, 18, 1700s. Over there, it's like, 200. And especially going into um, what are abbeys? Like where did we go? That one place that was like the old where monks were, um,
Monastery?
monastery. Thank you. I was like, what is that word? Uh, those old places that you knew people were deliberately trying to nurture those sacred spaces because they longed to be in unison with God, and they were listening. And I think there's moments and there's places that are much more ripe for us to come and experience. A, because God's there, but then also there's environment that just, walking into an old cathedral can become a sacred space because there's just something about the stained glass windows. I mean, we were at was it St. Patrick's Cathedral, and it's huge, right? And you just feel this sense. I think going up into the mountains when I'm up in on Mount Tahoma, like it's like this huge mountain that just towers, and in the mission field, when we step into moments, um, and if we're quiet enough and recognize, hey, God is here working within these people, right? God is the God of those men, right? Because all people belong to Him, um, and the sacred moment becomes when we join God in His redeeming work.
Mm.
Because Jesus said, I'll tell people like, hey, if you really want to get to know Jesus and hang out with him, go do what he does, right? Like in Matthew 24:25, who did he identify with? He identified with the people that were hungry. He identified with the people that were in jail. He identified with, right? He said, hey, these are my people, and I was there when you did these things. You fed me, you took care of me. And so it's become sacred because you're joining him in his work in bringing about redemption, in identifying the Imago Dei, in embracing and calling that out, so people can see and experience redemption. So I think sacred spaces are those places that God is at work, that God is uh, um, sovereign over all things, and so it's important for us to take much more of that humble perspective as we step into especially the mission field, right? Like that Ham stepping in, and the first piece is me just listening to where God is working, listening to the people that as much as we are there to serve, we're also there to just come alongside and
Mm.
sit.
Yeah, and you mentioned, so part of your doctorate work and I believe you said you're writing a book as well, about restorative listening. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Um, so maybe just expand just a little bit on what restorative listening looks like.
Okay. Well, it began with a real like just identifying, especially, and it's crazy because a lot of the research happened during 2020, right? Sometimes it seems so far away during COVID, right?
Mhm.
And where we became so divisive and even more split in all elements of culture in the world, um, and so I was like, man, we just don't listen anymore. We can be distracted and we can list all of the things, but oftentimes, and I found this especially in the church, we listened in order um, to compete or not compete, but to combat. I'm listening. I'll sit here and go, and I'm ready to like jump on you, Michael, because you said something or we disagree with something. And so I'm listening really not to get to know and understand. I'm listening to like argue, and those that were really not listening. Um, and so identifying that, and so I said, man, like we've got to shift the way that we come at people, the way that we listen to people, because I think the true art, the true beauty of communication and connecting with people is being able to sit with them and to really hear their story and not just hear but steward their story to go because anytime you hear someone's story, it's a sacred thing, and you carry it with them or you carry it with you wherever you go, right? It's forever if I hold it well. So, restorative listening is more about I describe it as our position towards someone else. That it's me sitting with someone and in a humble manner, willing to jettison my bias as much as I can, jettison my agenda, and
Mhm.
sit with someone else. And especially when it comes to especially when it comes, I think in the church we panic. And in a lot of the research, I've had people say, well, if I just sit and listen to this person who has, whether it's a different religion or a different perspective on life or whatever, if I just listen to them, then I'm 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 agreeing with them, or I'm giving them the feeling that I agree with them. And I said, no, you're not. Why can't we just sit and listen to someone and try to understand, ask more questions instead of make more statements? It's in those moments that I can sit with someone. I remember when I was in college and we were in Zanzibar, and Zanzibar is like 99. It's like 99% Islamic of the Islam faith, and we were staying in a hostel, and I just hung out. Everyone was in their room, and the individual, the person at the front desk, was about our age. So I just sat and I started a conversation with him, and it was the coolest conversation. And at some point, his religion came up, my religion came up, and here's the crazy thing: we were able to talk to each other, right? Like I was willing to sit with him and to hear his story, and I was willing to um, hold it because I'm still telling this story, right, of his experiences, and I didn't feel this need to have to like argue with him or feel this need to like hate him, right? Like I
Mhm.
allowed what our similarities to bind us together, and I from that built a relationship of um, connecting with him and understanding his story. So restorative listening is taking that position towards other human beings and engaging with them, asking more questions.
Mhm.
Um, and in the church then we get oftentimes again this is another people are like, well, yeah, but you need to convert them, you need to. We were never in charge of conversion, were we? I mean, I've never. What I see God say is to go and make disciples, and discipleship begins with a nurturing of a relationship, and the Spirit moves again. He is Lord of the cosmos. And so the spirit's moving. And so all I get to do is show up and engage with people, listen to people, understand. I
Mm.
think I think the incarnation is one of the greatest examples of restorative listening. Um, Jesus came into our timeline. He put on flesh to sit with us, to understand, so that he could say, "Oh yeah, I get that." Right? Like in Hebrews it says we don't have a high priest that is disengaged with us. We have someone who understands. He has felt what we have felt. He has felt hurt and pain. Um, and at the end of the day, that's restorative listening, being able to truly engage with someone in order to make a connection versus make a point.
Mm.
I could go on and on, but that's, I think, gist of it.
Mm. That's good. So this is an incredible type of listening that involves like a lot of humility and like putting aside yourself. You've talked a lot about that. Do you think that's something that has come naturally for you? And if so, why do you think that is? And if it's not something that's come naturally for you, what are some tools that you use to get to the point where you can be a better listener in this way?
That's a really good question.
Good
Um,
question, Haley. Yeah.
I think there are some people that have a natural intuition or empathy towards others, but so I think I'm very relationship driven, but I think there's still a lot that I've had to work through and figure out, especially when it comes to situations that are, for example, I was in the midst of all of this work and research, and I was actually on a mission discovery trip, and I was talking with, and I'm going to leave the state out of this and everything out of it, but I was with some people, and someone from a group. It was a leader, it was me, and an individual that was from a local, like right there from that area. And so this person from the group was like commenting about how much they just love the state and like the leadership, and it was going on and on. And this is someone that for years and years I have a relationship and I have like a friendship and like I respect. And they started to go on about certain things politically and like choices. And Haley, at that moment, I was like, I'm out. I am out because like I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with like, we naturally, like
Mhm.
sin naturally builds up, right, to push us apart and to separate, to separate, to separate. And I felt it building, and I was like, nope, I can't, right? Like I think that the spirit moves in ways that also reminds us, convicts us of sin, but that seems in this moment harsh, but like says, hey, wait a minute here. What you're doing is dividing.
Mm.
That's not what I'm about, and that's not what the work that you're putting into. And so I think the one of the things I've had to learn and to train myself is to just be aware of even my biases, right? To be aware of the things that I start to allow passion to separate. And so there's certain things you can bring up right now, and I probably am going to start to do this, right?
Mm.
And in the book, I talk about, I think we are born with this position, our fists clenched and somewhat in a fighting position because we want to get what we want. Babies naturally come out like this, wailing. And I've had to work on being okay and finding ways to lower my fists
Mm.
and to be more open versus this,
Mhm.
going from a fighting stance into a open stance. So I think it's being aware of my biases. It's being aware of the things that I'm passionate about, and so when those conversations come up, when I encounter someone who disagrees in whatever it may be, making sure that I'm listening to myself
Mhm.
and being willing to not respond right away, but
Mm.
giving space to let something just sit, right? So you can say something that's offensive, or I get angry, or we need more space sometimes, I think.
Mhm.
In
Yeah.
and so and I would even say that giving more space allows us in a conversation because we get so worked up that you might be talking, Haley, and I'm sitting there and I'm like starting to think about, okay, what am I going to say? Or she said
Right.
this, and so I need to respond this way. But when I give permission for space, I don't have to worry about trying to respond to you
Mm. Mhm.
because I know I'm going to have time.
Yeah.
So what I can do is just sit and allow your words to sit in it and to listen to it and to be with you in that moment. And then when you're done, then take that step back to have space to either process or to say, okay, what did that do within me so that I'm not throwing up my fists or I'm not. Um, so I think giving space, being aware of yourself, being aware of your passions, these are the things that I've had to work on that have helped me, I think, become a better restorative listener.
Mhm.
Um, and know at the end of the day, each person is imago Dei. Each person is made in the image of God, and there's always a backstory for every person. And when someone comes at me, as much as I want to throw my fists up and like swing at them as well, I have to know they're coming at me because of something. They've been hurt. And honestly, like that sometimes just stinks.
Mhm.
Because you want to be mad at someone, you want to be able to like respond, you want to be, but then you start to like work towards an awareness of them and where they're coming from. And sometimes people just make nasty, mean decisions. Um, but I mean, those are all things that I think if we are to be better listeners, those are things that we have to work on and to understand that there's ourselves that we have to be aware of. There's being aware of the other person, um, and giving ourselves space
Mhm.
to process or to even know that there's things that I don't have to respond.
Mhm.
As much as I want to respond, I don't need to respond.
Mhm.
Um, I'll admit it. I love to get the last word. Oh man, it just there's a this might seem psychotic as I say this out loud. There's a sense of power getting the last word, whether it's a debate. And I think being willing to say, I don't need to have the last word. I don't have to be the smartest in the room.
Mhm.
I can just sit. The trip to Ireland, God was really working on that because I've really struggled with trying to like, hey, look at me. And God really was like, hey, Phil, like you don't have to be the one that has all the answers. You don't have to be
Mhm.
the one to you don't have to prove yourself. Just sit and be present with people, be present in the moment. That's more important than trying to showcase your intelligence. And so I've learned to like step back,
Yeah.
um, and that's hard.
Mhm.
Mhm.
There's an interesting. I saw an interview with Jordan Klepper. He is on the Daily Show, and he's the one that he'll go out to different political rallies and ask people questions. And he was at this one rally, and this one guy was kind of hounding him and like following him around, and just trying to make his day generally not great. And he did it like days in a row where everywhere Jordan was, this guy would show up and just kind of be a nuisance. And then Jordan was getting on a plane and his plane got delayed, and so he went to like the restaurant right by his gate, and sitting like right there beside him was this guy. And they both had their planes delayed, and so they ended up spending like 3 hours together just talking. And these are two people who disagree on just about everything, but they ended up being able to have a 3-hour conversation because they had the space, they had the time,
Mm-hmm.
and they were willing to at least hear each other out. And he in the interview where he's just like, yeah, we left there, and he's still gonna probably show up and do the same thing, but like we at least kind of like saw each other as not as more than just the
Mm-hmm.
enemy. And
Mhm.
I think that's just so valuable. On the mission on a mission trip where we're looking for and hoping to encounter sacred spaces, um, putting the practice of restorative listening, um, like focusing on that, I think is very important, right?
Mm-hmm. It definitely is because I mean, you're with other people, right? There's it's a you're with your group, and then maybe there's another church in there too, or another group of people, right? And so you're having to navigate that, but even more than you're working with other people that are from a different culture, different language, different experiences, different. And so when I think the most important is when we show up in the name of Jesus,
Mm,
we have to hold fast to the very beautiful practice of incarnation, right? Like he didn't come swinging swords. He didn't come trying to, he sat with people. The woman at the well, he sat with her. He
mm,
asked questions. He didn't make statements. When you look at a lot of his interactions, Jesus just sat and asked questions, right? And built relationship versus building a platform.
mm,
Because the kingdom of God says everyone is imago Dei, and we have to work to the kingdom of God, and it's growing is redeeming, is the act of redeeming the broken stuff of this world. I mean,
mm,
that's what redemption is making broken or fixing broken, right? I like to say it's making sin made the world ugly, and so redemption is making things beautiful again.
mhm,
Mm.
And so it's our part is just showing up and joining God in that work. And the only way that we can do that is to truly sit with others so that they know and feel and experience what that love is.
mm. That's
So yeah,
good.
it's very important.
Hmm.
Mm. That's really good.
Well, Phil, thank you for coming on and joining us today. I know that Michael and I would both like to ask you a million more questions and all the things, but sadly we're running out of time. So, Michael, do you want to go ahead and ask our final question?
Yeah. Phil, what's like one or two things that are just really sparking inspiration or joy? I'm not going to say spark joy. That's not that's
The
not
minimalist lady.
come on, Marie Kondo.
Yeah, I love her.
No,
But she's right. I mean, that's
Yeah.
she's right, but anyway, I have no problems with Marie Kondo. Um, Phil, what are some of the things right now that you are just getting you are wild about that are inspiring you or just pushing you?
one book that The Anxious Generation.
I'm
Mm.
reading that too.
Hey, um, it's for those. It's a book just about how we've created a culture of people that are anxiety driven because of the technology, and we haven't in a healthy way dealt with the because we didn't know the downfalls of technology and cell phone usage. And I mean, we're much more like this, right, on our phones, and as much as we're connected, we're disconnected. And so that's been something that I've really been like reading and working through for myself and trying to disengage even more because sometimes consumption just destroys us. So that has been one thing that's it's honestly weirdly brought me joy because it's helped me to sort and create space for myself in those margins that I need in my own life, but then also to recognize how to help others younger than me, um, the Gen Zers, proud millennial here. And so those younger to find space as well. Also, another like a show that just has like it hit me. It hit, as my daughter says, Eliana. It hit all the mo's. Has been Shrinking, which is on Apple TV, and it's about a therapist. And as have now taken on in counseling, a therapist who goes through trauma in his life and trying to deal with his trauma, but also trying to help others. Like it's so real because I appreciate it because it oftentimes we don't recognize our own traumas and what we are having to deal with, especially those of us in ministry, those of us that are in service positions. We have to make sure that we keep ourselves healthy, and it's okay for us to be messed up. Like we're
Mhm.
messed up. That's Henry Nouwen's wounded healer kind of thing that we minister, we care out of our own woundedness. So it's a really good one, and the season ended, and man, it like I was bawling last night, bawling like ah
What's that? It's season 2, right? It's only.
no, it's like season three.
Is there 3 seasons already?
There's three seasons, yeah.
Okay. Whatever the last season was, the ending just it was so good. Um
Season three, Michael, you gotta season three ends with such and I don't know I don't know any of their hearts and whatnot, but the ending of season three encompasses the gospel. Oh my, it leaves you like, and then like you like, and it wrecks you. It's beautiful. It's
yeah.
so beautiful. Um, for those listening, you're like, oh, I want to watch this. There's some language there. There's
Lot of swear words.
a lot of swear words, and some content that can be intense. But I mean, that's the brokenness. And so I don't let my young children watch it. Um, but yeah, so that's like in those moments, and I think stories, anytime I can grasp onto a story, whether it's watching a TV show that demonstrates the underlining, I've told my children this, that the gospel story is found in all things because that's the greatest story.
Mm,
Redemption, forgiveness, love, like that's the Jesus stuff, right? And it's in us, it's in our DNA, whether we point to it or not. So those kind of stories are what give me, inspire me, and
yeah.
make me want to be a better human.
Yeah. I concur, Phil. That was. I'm remembering how great it was, and no spoilers, but it's just a really sweet episode.
Yeah, and it takes place on Thanksgiving, and like that's one of my favorite days.
All right. Well, we'll have to have you back on to talk about why you love Thanksgiving so much.
Okay,
Um, all right. Well, Phil Long, thank you so much for joining
thank
us
you.
today on our podcast. It's been a real pleasure having you.
It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you for listening to Field Notes, a podcast by Mission Discovery. For more information about who we are and how you can get involved, visit our website at missiondiscovery.org.